You probably don't need me to tell you this, but if you haven't in a while, you should watch The Matrix again. Obviously, it's one of my favorite movies ever, and I kind of wanted to go on record and talk about it and kind of revisit it before The Matrix 4 starts ramping up. There's going to be a trailer soon. Hopefully that comes out soon. That could be amazing or the worst thing in the world. We'll see. It doesn't tarnish the original 1999 Matrix, which it's the best. When it came out, I was a bit too young to see it in theaters, but I saw it probably in 2000. And interestingly enough, I specifically remember The Matrix being one of my last VHS tapes and one of my first DVDs. I watched it over and over and over again, and it was a really good use case for DVDs in particular because of scene selection and the fact that the movie has so many scenes that you just watch over and over and over again. You pop in the DVD just to watch that lobby scene, just to watch that dojo scene, you know? But there's so much to The Matrix. I mean, obviously, not to mention the fact that it feels like a video game in a lot of ways structurally. And speaking of that, you know I'm going to talk about the video games eventually. But with The Matrix specifically, especially now in a world where we've had 3 of them, the original Matrix stands out so much for me because of how spooky it is, especially the early parts of the movie, the lead up to it, the mystery, you know, Neo figuring everything out, following the rabbit hole, following the white rabbit, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Got it. I'm basically Morpheus. But like the whole thing, it's like everything takes place at night. It's always raining. It's always like dark and gritty and like noir and filtered, and it's really effective for kind of building this tension because it's like with the mystery of like what is the Matrix and discovering this whole hacker world. There's also a good little sense of dread and weird mystery to it that is something that I, like watching the movie back again, I realize it just helps build the atmosphere so much to the point where so many scenes, right? Like throughout the city, under the bridge, all of that. I think the actual city thing that the Matrix movies do, I love more than anything the concept of it just being the city. It's not a specific city. It doesn't really have a lot of identifiable landmarks. It is just big modern city. It's vague and it really works. It technically here, if you want to get into like deeper nerd Matrix lore, it's called the Mega City or Mega City. But it's really just city. And other movies do this. The Tron movies do this. I love it. It's a cool way of making it feel familiar, but still very much its own thing with its own lore and its own stories. And it doesn't get in the way, but it just looks really cool all of the time. Leading up to when Neo first meets Morpheus, and they could have had that meeting anywhere, but they had to have it in a spooky, haunted, abandoned hotel. Why? Because it's awesome. Getting wrapped up in this story, you know, when The Matrix first released, there was like a common thing between me and my friends and even like my relatives and stuff was the idea like you had to watch it like once or twice before you could really understand it. Now, knowing the plot and like watching it back, I look and I'm like, why was it so hard for us to understand? Were we just not as exposed to that many high sci-fi concepts? You know, the Matrix takes a lot of ideas from various sci-fi books, but presented to the average person, it is this new, incredible concept of like, what if this world isn't really the world? It's a simulation. So watching it for the first time, it is a lot to grasp when it's mixed in with all of the cool shooting and action and like pretty much Dragon Ball Z characters, which is another reason why I really liked it. But it's also interesting if you want to look at it as either like a video game thing or really like the hero's journey, that whole archetype. Because for Neo, most of the movie is like a tutorial. He's getting onboarded. He's getting briefed about all this stuff. He's getting the exposition literally dumped at him to the point of being like, AI, you mean artificial intelligence? To EMP, what's that? They say electromagnetic pulse. Like you're learning all of this stuff, and sometimes it's a little ham-fisted, but the way they introduce all of this to you still ends up being pretty wild, especially with the context of what I really like the most is that it's Neo learning to believe in himself. And it's a really interesting thing with how it's almost like the entire movie. It's almost like real life sometimes. You know, it's like people might think you're great or they talk you up or they believe in you. People around you, maybe your family members, your mom, your dad, whoever, they believe in you and they talk you up. But like you yourself don't quite feel that. The amount of times in this movie, Neo shakes his head or says no, or says I'm not gonna, or this isn't real, and even gets rejected by the Oracle. Like the amount of kind of turning away from what people believe you are is really interesting, coupled with the fact that the strongest presence in the movie for me personally, Morpheus, and how hard he believes is really cool, especially with the added context of the later movies where you get introduced to people that think that the whole like religious, pseudo-religious aspect of it and the idea of the one is bullshit. So there's all of that too, where it's like, is he right? Is this really even a thing? Is perfect. And I gotta say, more and more over time, as much as the Neo thing, you know, with him by the end of the movie finally becoming the cool, awesome video game character, the real stealer of the show, the real show stealer is Morpheus. 100%. Morpheus, Dorpheus.
Morpheus, go eat some walruses.
Specifically because he's just so extra. There's no other like way to, like, that's a stupid word, but there's no other way to describe. He's just so just right over the top. It's like Lawrence Fishburne in his prime having so much goddamn fun. Just the way he is on screen at all times, from the way he stands with his hands behind his back to the way he delivers everything. You've been living in a dream world, Neo, to like when he's talking on the phone with him in the beginning and he's like, yes. Just all of it, he hams it up so ridiculous, and it is just perfect. Morpheus's dialogue is the most memorable. The way he appears on screen, I think, is the most memorable. And I think in this movie specifically, he's more iconic than Neo or anybody else, other than, of course, Agent Smith, who is top tier villain, if you ask me. But where Lawrence Fishburne, or where Morpheus really comes alive for me, is the dojo fight scene. You get to see that mysticalness of him, but then you also get to see the real him. You know, come on, stop trying to hit me, like stuff like that. Not to mention the fact that like it's two actors doing things on screen, hitting each other, like some real contact and some real good choreography, and the camera is willing to just sit there and show you these two actors giving it their best shot, and it's really convincing. Obviously, Keanu Reeves at this point is known for doing that type of stuff and going all in, whether it's being a murderer in John Wick or being a kung fu master in The Matrix. He sells it. Do they sell it quite as like someone like Donnie Yen in Ip Man? No, but still, it's really incredible to watch. From the dojo fight scene, which is I love it, to the subway fight scene at the end. There's some awesome stuff going on there, and you have Keanu Reeves, and you also have Hugo Weaving giving it his best shot and doing awesome. And that's not even going to mention like the groundbreaking special effects, you know, all those crazy shots they did, you know, the 360 camera degree thing, Trinity going up like that. You have stuff like that mixed with just people doing fights on wires, and it's perfect. Then you also just have movie sets, from the rooftop chase in the beginning to the subway station fight to the dojo. It's just good movie set stuff. Then you have all the sci-fi stuff, which I didn't even have a second to talk about. You have the Nebuchadnezzar and the ship, and the whole way that's introduced and the way the crew is introduced is just like peak sci-fi. Him walking and he's like, welcome to the main deck, and he's like, here's this person, here's this person, here's this person. It's introduced like it's basically introduced like Firefly or like a Star Trek crew or a video game, and it's perfect. And I think the contrasting thing, like the sci-fi world or the real world, works so well with everything else, because once the movie starts to go in more fantastical places and you lose that dark city mystery that you have in the early parts of the movie, the sci-fi world makes up for that, because everything, you're just like everybody just exists in this giant underground haunted tunnel underneath the massive cities that were destroyed in this war. Makes it just abstract enough. I think the other Matrix movies kind of unveiled everything and built out the world, but and people feel differently about it. I really like the other two movies. I know that might be like an unpopular opinion. I still think this one's the best. And part of the reason specifically is because some things are still so vague. You know, you don't know, you hear about Zion, you don't see Zion. You hear about other ships out there and other crews, but you don't see them. So it's really just enough to onboard you into this world and really understand this without it going cuckoo bananas. And for me, I said this in another previous video about music and how it can really tie things together and almost save things. Now, I'm not saying that The Matrix would be bad without its score that was Don Davis, composed by Don Davis, but I'm saying that it is 1,000 times better because of the score, because of the way for every specific thing that happens on screen, there is a special thing, a bit of music composed for it. When movies do that, I love it. And it works so well here, from every single fight scene to little tense moments to the mystery to the sci-fi stuff to the crazy scene with Neo being unplugged and the license tracks and stuff. Like, you have Rob Zombie, you have Marilyn Manson, you have a lot of cool stuff that fits with this time, fits with this vibe, fits with this atmosphere. And I think it's just amazing that they pulled off all of this. Like, think about what the Wachowskis did, right? Like, they put out this expensive, crazy movie with groundbreaking special effects that really blew people's mind. Also, highly choreographed, incredible fights where you just see the actors on screen really doing things with minimal CGI here and there because they couldn't really build full CGI characters yet. You have this science fiction world with flying hovercrafts being chased by robots in tunnels. Then you have the really crazy concept of people being used for their energy, harvested by machines in this crazy, like, you know, H.R. Giger-esque world filled with farms of people. It's insane. And the fact that they introduce people to all of that, the whole simulation world, this world isn't real, it's just in your head, you're being harvested somewhere. That, the Dragon Ball Z action, the crazy shootouts, the video game ass shit. I think it's a miracle that this movie turned out the way it did. Because so many movies could try and introduce all that, and like they could be in the writer's room coming up with it and being like, oh my God, yes, yes, yes. And then it can really stumble on the weight of its own either presentation or exposition, how all of this information is given. And The Matrix nails it. And what's interesting too is, like, watching it back, The Matrix isn't all action. You know, there's large chunks of the movie where there isn't really a lot of action, and it's still so interesting because this mystery is being unfurled for you. You're figuring out what The Matrix is, and you're figuring out what this real world is. And it's sweet. As a pop culture thing too, at the time, it just took off and was parodied everywhere. The amount of things that spoofed the lobby scene, which is the scene I watched the most when I got the DVD. Go to scene selections and hit the lobby scene and turn the volume up the best you can. DVDs were really awesome also for having the subtitles just being an easy thing to turn on, because the elevator scene, when Neo says, "There is no spoon," I used to always go, "What? What did he say?" And then I turned on the subtitles and I finally knew that he said, "There is no spoon." I know that's like a really stupid example, but speaking of the spoon, the kid in the Oracle's apartment with the spoons is like the most convincing child actor I've ever seen. Like, he actually sounded like he believed what he said in that moment. I don't know where I was going, but the lobby scene was incredible. But for me, the ending is so fucking cool. Because it circles back to the whole video game character thing, where you know, the hero's journey, where Neo isn't really that awesome person until the very end. And what's really good about it is that it's not about him getting his powers or getting that suit or getting that sword. It's about him just believing that he is the one and unlocking that within himself. And that goes back with that theme that I love, that pressure that is put on him by Morpheus, mostly, but by other characters that believe in him, that he is this thing, and he didn't know for sure. And then when he unlocks it, it is awesome, because you get the crazy awesome fight scenes at the end, but you get that ending. That fucking ending is so perfect. I think it's like one of the best endings ever. And if The Matrix never went beyond that point, it would have been totally fine. This movie's ending is so ingrained in my mind, and so just like there's a chunk of my brain that's just like, it's locked in there forever. It's not gonna get erased, anything. To the point where every time I walk outside and put sunglasses on, I think of that scene. I literally fucking look around and I put on my sunglasses like that to the Rage Against the Machine song in my head. It's perfect. Number one, just because Wake Up is an incredible Rage song. It's one of the better ones. It's one of the more underrated ones. The way it hits with the cut to credits, the end credits at the end like that. But the fact that Neo flies away is so cool, because it's that thing where that's at the end where you go, oh, he is the one, even more so than just him believing it and doing the cool shit with the agents at the end fight scene. But the fact that he could fly comes out of left field and is awesome. You believe it. It's so cool. And that's it. I don't know. The moral of the story is, if you believe in yourself, you too can fly. No, I don't know. There's a lot to unpack that other people have unpacked a lot with The Matrix, with the Wachowskis, the gender identity, other higher sci-fi concepts. But for me, what I like about it, just as like a dumb boy, is, believing in yourself. Because when you believe in yourself, you could do really cool shit like you do in The Matrix Reloaded, which I am going to make a video about because I am a huge defender of that movie and I love it almost as much as the original Matrix, but like for different reasons. We'll talk about that soon. I wanted to go on record about all these Matrix movies. So I want to hear what you think of the original. Most notably, obviously, what's your favorite big action scene, but also who's your favorite side character? I think mine is Tank, the best operator ever, and I was so pissed that he got killed, but just, it's so good, his moments. That and also Joe Pantoliano, just always an extremely underrated guy. I love him. The original Ben Urich, just saying. But yeah, let me know your favorite action scene and your favorite character. Because there's so much, like everybody has a favorite character. Like I said, it's kind of Morpheus, just with how iconic and striking he is. But Trinity's amazing. Carrie-Anne Moss is amazing. Keanu's amazing. Like, who's your favorite? Let's talk. I want to hear from you, so let me know. And keep your eyes peeled for more Matrix videos. I'm going to go back to making video game videos soon, I promise. But I just wanted to get this out there because I love it so much. So hopefully you enjoyed hanging out with me, rambling about The Matrix for 15 minutes. If you did, clicking a like button is all you got to do. It helps me. Thank you. And thank you to those of you who watch, and thank you to those of you who have supported me on Patreon and YouTube memberships. For real, shout out to yous guys. But I'm Jake Baldino. Thanks for being here. Subscribe because video games. Pizza's on me.